A ghost's secret life. The wind howled through the skeletal trees, their bare branches clawing at the moonlit sky. The old Victorian house stood at the end of the street, its windows dark and lifeless, like the hollow eyes of a skull. For years, it had been abandoned, a relic of a bygone era, its history buried beneath layers of dust and decay. But tonight, something stirred within its walls. Emma had always been drawn to the house. As a child, she would dare her friends to run up to the porch and touch the door. They never did. There was something about the house that made their skin crawl, a feeling of being watched, even when no one was there. Now, as an adult, Emma found herself standing in front of the house once again, her breath visible in the cold night air. She had inherited the house from her late aunt, a woman she barely knew. The lawyer had handed her the keys with a grim expression, warning her to be careful. "There are stories about that house," he had said. "Stories you wouldn't believe." Emma had laughed it off at the time, but now, as she stood on the creaking porch, she felt a chill run down her spine. The key turned in the lock with a loud click, and the door swung open with a groan. The air inside was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic and sharp. She stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, and the floorboards groaned under her weight. The house was a maze of rooms, each one more decrepit than the last. But as she explored, she began to notice something strange. The house was filled with personal belongings, clothes, books, photographs, all untouched, as if the occupants had simply vanished. In the living room, a teacup sat on the coffee table, the tea long since evaporated, leaving behind a dark stain. In the bedroom, a dress hung in the closet, its fabric yellowed with age. Emma's heart raced as she climbed the stairs to the second floor. The air grew colder with each step, and she could hear the faint sound of whispering. She told herself it was just the wind, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. At the end of the hallway was a door, slightly ajar. Emma pushed it open, her flashlight revealing a small room. It was a child's room, with a tiny bed and a rocking horse in the corner. The walls were covered in drawings, crude and unsettling, depicting shadowy figures and twisted faces. In the center of the room was a doll, its porcelain face cracked and its glassy eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Emma picked it up, her fingers trembling. The doll's head lolled to the side, and a small piece of paper fell out of its dress. It was a note, written in a child's handwriting. "Help me." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She dropped the doll and backed away, her heart pounding. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, and she realized it was coming from the walls. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice shaking. The room grew colder, and the air seemed to thicken. The drawings on the walls began to move, the figures twisting and writhing as if alive. Emma stumbled back, her flashlight flickering. And then she saw it. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form flickering like a dying flame. It was a child, a little girl, her face pale and her eyes hollow. She reached out to Emma, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. "Please," the ghostly child whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help me." Emma's mind raced. She wanted to run, to scream, but she couldn't move. The child's eyes bore into hers, filled with a sadness that made her chest ache. "What happened to you?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The child's form flickered, and the room around them began to change. The walls peeled away, revealing a scene from the past. Emma watched in horror as the events unfolded before her eyes. The little girl had lived in the house with her parents, a happy family until one fateful night. Her father, a man consumed by jealousy and rage, had killed her mother in a fit of madness. The child had witnessed it all, hiding in the closet as her father searched for her. When he found her, he had locked her in the attic, leaving her to die. The child's spirit had never left the house, trapped in a never-ending cycle of fear and despair. Emma's heart broke as the vision faded, and the child's ghostly form reappeared before her. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't deserve this." The child's eyes softened, and for a moment, she looked at peace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. And then she was gone. The room fell silent, the air warm once again. Emma sank to her knees, her body trembling. She didn't know how long she sat there, but when she finally stood, she knew what she had to do. She spent the next few days cleaning the house, removing the layers of dust and decay. She buried the child's belongings in the backyard, giving her the peace she had been denied in life. As she stood by the small grave, Emma felt a sense of closure. The house was no longer a place of fear, but a place of healing. But as she turned to leave, she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," a voice whispered in her ear. Emma smiled, knowing that the child's spirit was finally free. But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. And in the window of the old Victorian house, a shadowy figure stood, its hollow eyes following her every move. The house was at peace, but it was not empty, and Emma knew that she would never truly be alone.